St. Thomas Aquinas was a saint, a philosopher, and a theologian. To study Aquinas is vital because his philosophy is as relevant today as it was when he wrote, lived, and taught. Epistemology is a critical reflection on what we know, how we know, and on the conclusions we reach in our thinking. Aquinas said, all conscious things implicitly know God in everything they know. As an example of the relevance and profound importance of Aquinas for today, Aquinas in the prima pars of his Summa Theologica talks about the human person, each of us. He describes the experience of the tension in human nature that results from the pull of wealth, power, and pleasure against the final end of human nature. Aquinas says there are certain individual goods which have not a necessary connection with happiness, because without them a man can be happy. Aquinas described the conflict and the tensions within each person that prevent peace and happiness. The person becomes trapped in their conflicts, according to Thomas, when there is no overall purpose in life. The person becomes trapped in their conflicts, according to Aquinas, when there is no overall purpose in life. A person has only many scattered desires, bits of gleaned, scattered information, leading to the subhuman, where the person becomes one with the animal or with the cosmos, but fails to be rationally human. Only a rational creature can comprehend the direction by which it is directed to its own acts. The person must not only know the truth intellectually, but must live their life practically according to the truth to find peace. Modern science has achieved many wonderful, extraordinary, and very helpful benefits. I'm not critical of the scientific methods, ways of knowing that involve careful observation, experimentation, and which nevertheless give only probable knowledge. Science cannot give us human ethics. Science cannot give us a philosophy because it immerses man in nature and avoids the essential and necessary subject of a person's destiny. Aristotle stated that nothing is in the intellect, the knowing process, that is not first in the senses. Aquinas says that below the operation of the rational soul, the mind, there exists the sensitive or sensing parts of the mind. One sees a green Georgia pine, smells its bristles, and touches and feels its bark. However, this sensing of bodily nature transcends the sensing parts of the mind, because the operations of the senses in a person are from an intrinsic principle common to the operations of the immaterial, spiritual mind. Aquinas also profoundly notes that knowledge of the soul, the mind, is open to the possibility of infused knowledge from a higher cause, allowing for grace as an example. The agent-active intellect illuminates the possible intellect through abstraction. Through apprehension, we understand that we are looking at a tree. Note, however, that apprehension is not equivalent to understanding. Sensible data by an intellectual mental purification of abstractions becomes the phantasm, the image of the object, the power of the agent intellect. The human intellect excels corporal matter because corporal matter does not have the power of the intellect. Next comes the receptive possible intellect, which is the instrument of conception, of judgment, and reasoning. Aquinas indicates that the human intellect does not achieve a complete understanding of an object in the first apprehension of the object, but first understands the properties and secondary qualities of the essence, the object understood as an invariable constant in modern science. One first sees a Georgia pine and notices its green color, smells its pine needles, and touches its bark before coming to an understanding of its essence as much as is possible. The second aspect of the knowing process is the reasoning function of the possible intellect in judging and reasoning about the information received from the senses. For Aquinas, the act of understanding is the perfect and supreme function of life. According to the principle of immanence, a power is more perfect in proportion as its acts are less restricted by the contingencies of matter. The Georgia pine is not known only by its different sense perceptions as green, so many feet high, and leaning under the power of the wind, but is understood as having the nature of a tree as the Georgia pine. The agent active intellect illuminates the possible intellect through abstraction. Through apprehension, we understand that we are looking at a tree. Note, however, that apprehension is not equivalent to understanding. Sensible data by an intellectual mental purification of abstraction becomes the phantasm, the image of the object, by the power of the agent intellect. The human intellect excels corporal matter because corporal matter does not have the power of the intellect. Sensible objects cannot lift themselves up to the level of intelligibility. Next comes the receptive possible intellect, which is the instrument of conception, judgment, and reasoning. Thomas indicates that the human intellect does not achieve a complete understanding of an object in the first appearance and apprehension of the object, but first understands the properties and secondary qualities of the essence, the object understood as an invariable constant. So then, one sees a Georgia pine and notices its green color, then smells its pine needles and touches its bark before coming to an understanding of the essence as much as possible through the agent active intellect and the possible intellect. Aquinas' theory of knowledge, beginning from sense knowledge, which unites the body and mind into the unity of the person. Aquinas' holomorphic doctrine is the opposite of Descartes, the founder of modern philosophy. Descartes stated that the essence of the mind is thinking, while the essence of the body is extension. This technical philosophical explanation of Aquinas' theory of knowledge provides a solution to the materialist theory of knowledge of Hume, who says knowledge is limited to the senses, and the idealism of Descartes, who stated that our ideas must be reflections of ideas in the divine intellect. For Aquinas, man enjoys such excellence to the extent that his intellect can reflect upon itself. In self-knowledge, the knowledge of one's mind, the intellect can know the truth insofar as the person reflects upon his knowing. The soul and its powers and acts are elements within the human person, and knowledge of them counts as knowledge of oneself. No active consciousness can be apprehended without some sort of knowledge of the self as the subject of such actions. In ending, Aquinas was not only a philosopher, he was a contemplative who wrote, "Knowledge is in the reason, whose function is to analyze what are united in reality, and to compare and synthesize what are diverse. For man's knowledge to be complete, he must know, therefore, the nature of a thing, its parts and powers and properties one by one. But love is in the appetite, which takes a thing just as it is. And so finally, in conclusion, Aquinas wrote, "Love works in a circle, for the beloved moves the lover by stamping a likeness, and the lover then goes out to hold the beloved in reality, who was the beginning now becomes the end of motion."